especially Dr. Salima Maouch, sorry. The title of my paper is Civic Education and EFL in Higher Education, Prospects, this is the title. The Status of Civic Education in Secondary School EFL Curriculum, a Critical Analysis. So start with the introduction. After the latest educational reforms, the Algerian educational policy has shifted towards incorporating civic themes in EFL teaching. Hence, EFL secondary school curriculum was built upon civic education notions with the aim of preparing students to be effective citizens in their society. The aims of this study. The present research is conducted so as to analyze the status of civic education in secondary school curriculum. Hence, the paper aims at, first, providing an overview of EFL secondary school syllabi with focus on the status of civic education in EFL secondary school curriculum. Second, it aims at investigating whether or not these civic education notions are effectively incorporated in EFL secondary school teaching. And finally, discussing the main obstacles that hinder the effective incorporation of civic education in EFL teaching. Now, we move to the main research questions. The first question: what is the status of civic education in Algerian EFL secondary school curriculum? Second, are civic education notions effectively implemented in EFL secondary school teaching? And finally, what are the obstacles that hinder the effective incorporation of civic education in secondary school EFL teaching process? Now we move to the methodology of research. Since the present study is concerned with the investigation of the status of civic education in Algerian secondary school English curriculum, the researcher has opted for comprehensive qualitative analysis of the secondary school English curriculum and classroom observation. In addition to obtaining teachers' and students' opinions on the status of civic education and the obstacles that might hinder its effective incorporation in the process of EFL secondary school teaching and learning. Furthermore, the researcher has opted for the case study approach in which the concerned secondary school students and teachers take the case of a small research sample. Now, who are the participants in this study? In order to ensure the variety of ideas and inspect different points of view concerning the subject matter, the population of the current study is divided into two categories. First, secondary school students. The research concerns first, second, and third year secondary school students at Al-Arbi Qwidar Secondary School, La Silis, Ourgla. 100 students out of 350 were randomly selected. While the second category is secondary school teachers. The teachers involved in the study were 20 teachers selected from 5 different secondary schools in Ourgla city. All the teachers who were investigated in the research are certified teachers with an experience of EFL secondary school teaching that varies between 8 and 22 years. Next, let's list the data collection methods. So as to ensure research validity and full representation of the situation under investigation, the researcher used multiple data collection methods. First, qualitative analysis of the 3 secondary school. First, qualitative analysis of the 3 secondary school level syllabi. Second, classroom observation. And the third instrument is questionnaires. The third instrument selected for conducting this research is questionnaires. Hence, 2 questionnaires were designed. The first directed to students of Al-Arbi Qwidar Secondary School, while the second was designed to secondary school EFL teachers. Now we move directly to the results of this research. After the collection of data through the different research instruments used in the study, the status of civic education in Algerian secondary school curriculum was explored and then analyzed. Furthermore, the obstacles that hinder the implementation of civic education in English secondary school teaching and learning were identified. We start first with the status of civic education in Algerian English secondary school curriculum. After conducting this research, the existence of civic education notions in the syllabi of the 3 levels of secondary school education is confirmed, as the analysis of the 3 secondary school level syllabi has yielded their richness in civic notions. However, it should be mentioned that these notions were only deduced after a detailed analysis of the program manual, the teacher's book, and the course books of English, and no clear statements or orientations towards adopting civic education strategy or one of its principles in Algerian secondary school education were found in the English secondary school curriculum. Second, we move to answer the second research question. The implementation of civic education in Algerian secondary schools. Depending on the data gathered from teachers and students' answers in the questionnaires, it can be concluded that civic education notions are not effectively incorporated in secondary school English teaching and learning. Thus, civic education has a secondary position in EFL secondary school teaching, since teachers give only little attention to it. Consequently, this was reflected on students as well, since they think that their teachers give less importance to the ideas, comprehension, and discussion, which will make them ignore civic education notions and focus only on syntax, grammar, and answering text-related questions. The obstacles that hinder the effective implementation of civic education in secondary school EFL teaching process. As for the main obstacles that prevent the effective implementation of civic education in secondary school English teaching, they are listed as follows. The first factor is students' low proficiency level. One of the major obstacles that hamper the appropriate and effective incorporation of civic education in Algerian secondary school teaching is students' low language proficiency level. Students, when asked about their level of proficiency of English language, 65% of informants declared that they have beginner's level, while 21% of students had an intermediate level and only 14% of them had an advanced level. The second factor is students' lack of interest in English. Another factor that might interfere with the incorporation of civic education in secondary school teaching is students' lack of interest in learning English. 56% of the students who underwent the study declared that they are not motivated in learning English. Therefore, teachers, even if they have the intention to deal with civic topics and raise students' enthusiasm towards discussing them, they will find themselves blocked with students' demotivation towards learning the language. The third factor is students' lack of interest in the civic topics and ideas studied in the lessons. Secondary school students, even if they are motivated to learn English, they focus most on learning grammar, vocabulary, and only few of them give importance to the topics and ideas communicated through the language. So when they were asked about their learning preferences, 48% of students said that they focus on grammar, while 39% on vocabulary, and only 13% of them focused on civic education topics. The ambiguity and complexity of some civic education notions, and the fourth factor is teachers' lack of interest in discussing civic education notions with their students. And finally, time constraints. Now we move directly to the conclusion. After conducting the study, the gathered data show that EFL secondary school curriculum is loaded with civic notions that, if properly dealt with, will result in a very solid and effective civic education in Algerian secondary schools, which will result in producing positive and responsible citizens who will participate in the development and well-being of their country. And even though these notions and their intended purposes were not explicitly indicated neither in the teacher's book nor in the program manual, their implicit existence is beyond denial. However, the implementation of these notions in secondary school EFL classroom is the real challenge for English language secondary school teachers, who faced many obstacles that prevented them from transmitting the civic notions embedded in the lessons they present to their students. Hence, it is undeniably true that conducting further research is of paramount importance to overcome the challenges that hinder the effective implementation of civic education and search for efficient methods that facilitate its incorporation. Sorry for taking a long time. Thank you.